Good morning, my loves. Right, we've got an interesting conversation happening in one of cake groups this morning. Not my group, one of the other ones. Um, the customer was basically unhappy with the cake and has complained. The topper was misspelt. There was a letter missing out of the name. On the customer's also saying that the cake wasn't very nice and no one ate it. I think sometimes in the cake groups, we're all very protective of each other, aren't we? We all want to say, oh no, don't just give the money back. But sometimes we do make mistakes, and sometimes we've got to hold his hands up. We're only human, right? A recipe that you might have made 100 times successfully in the past, if your oven's a few degrees out, if it's been in the oven 10 minutes more or less than usual, if you use a different brand of butter, if your kitchen's colder at a certain time of year, so your flour's colder, things like that can all affect how your cake turns out. You can't just sort of say, well, I've sold hundreds of that cake and no one's complained before, and the customer will just be like, oh, okay, then it's just my fault. It's not like that. We are human. We're not infallible. No matter how hard we try, sometimes we do genuinely make mistakes. I've had a few complaints in my time, over 14 years of cake making. There's only once when I feel that I've genuinely been scammed. To quickly tell the story, it was a 3-tier wedding cake that collapsed. I was mortified. I immediately refunded. I gave them £50 on top to go and have a meal out on me because I was absolutely devastated. And I spent a week going over it in my head, trying to work out what had happened. I'd dowelled it all. I'd done it all properly. It was when I had a shop, and the venue was actually just around the corner at a hotel. So I actually spoke to someone who worked at the hotel, and after refunding him, I found out that the groom, while drunk, had carried this 3-tier cake from the daytime reception room into the evening reception room himself, despite protestations from the staff that they'd do it. It was 26 degrees that day. There was no aircon at the venue. So yeah, the cake collapsed. But that is the only time that I've ever felt that I've been scammed. Someone else once tried it, but they didn't get away with it. But every other time I've received the cake back, or I've seen photographs and I've recognised that I've done something wrong. Twice, I'll hold my hands up, twice I used plain flour instead of self-raising flour. Absolutely devastating. What else I've done a few things that you know in your heart if you've done right or done wrong. Sometimes you genuinely don't know what's happened, but sometimes you can tell from a photograph if a cake's dry or if it's too stodgy, you know, if you've over syruped it or something like that. Sometimes people are trying it on. The fact is, if someone's not happy with a cake and that to the point that they've complained to you about it, they're going to be telling that story. They're going to be telling other people, whether they're arseholes or not, which I think the knee-jerk reaction is to feel defensive. Certainly in these cake groups, everyone kind of jumps in, no, don't refund. If you've done something wrong, you need to refund. Sometimes you don't know what you've done wrong, but if the customer is really genuinely not happy, you've done something wrong. You know, it might just be a question of taste, or it might be that you've cocked up. Anyone can make a mistake, right? How we handle it as business owners is the making of us. If like I say, the customer's going to tell that story that they got this cake and the topper was spelt wrong and the cake was stodgy and too sweet and people didn't like it. You can't just go around saying, well, all right, fair enough, topper were wrong, but I don't see why I should have to refund. Of course you should refund. Consumer protection is there for a reason, and we are not exempt from it just because, you know, money's a bit tight for us. Consumer protection states that a product must be fit for purpose. So if the customer is saying that that cake was inedible, you've got to find out why, and you've got to deal with it properly. I'm not saying you should immediately refund everything every single time someone complains, but you need to investigate what happened. You need to handle it with the customer gently, because if you go straight in on the defensive, well, I've sold that cake 100 times and no one's ever complained before. There's a first time for everything. If that customer feels that they're, you know, genuinely unhappy with what they've got from you, Imagine what that's going to do to your reputation. They go around, they say that they've got this cake and there was a problem with it. If they're then adding on to that saying, and she wouldn't even consider giving me a refund, she just told me that she'd sold hundreds of cakes before, it's going to be really damaging to your reputation. So it hurts, it's painful, but we've got to accept that we're not infallible. We've got to accept that sometimes we do make absolute cock-ups. Through no fault, with the best of intentions, we are only human. But the customer's human as well. And if they've built up this event, it's such an important event that they're having a bespoke cake made for it and they've paid you a decent price, sometimes just be like, oh, it's all right, I'll refund you. It's not always, you've got to make up for it. You've really got to make that customer feel heard. You've got to make them feel like they've had some sort of recompense. You can't just, well, I'll refund you a topper. Because that event's, the disappointment they'll have felt when they realised that topper was wrong. These events can be emotional times, especially when a lot of planning's gone into it. So please just bear in mind that this customer is a human being and only you can save your reputation at this point. So yeah, they're going to tell the story either way. So suck it up. Sometimes you just got to refund. It's difficult, but every cake is a lesson, especially at the beginning.